One day you wake up and realize you are done begging for love, done explaining yourself, done carrying relationships that suffocate your spirit, and in that moment you discover something powerful. The door you were afraid to walk through was actually the door to your freedom. You don't lose people when you walk away. You lose the pain they brought into your life. And here's the Stoic truth most people never learn. A person who cannot walk away is a person who has already lost control of their life. The Stoics taught that attachment is the root of suffering, not because people are bad, but because you give them permission to disturb your peace. The second you take that permission back, your mind becomes your own again. Walking away is not abandoning anyone. It is returning to yourself. It is reclaiming your dignity, rebuilding your inner strength, and reminding your soul that peace is not negotiable. Your real life doesn't begin when you stay. It begins the moment you finally walk away from what hurts you. 1. Your self-respect is worth more than their approval. People lose themselves slowly, silently, without even realizing it. It begins with small compromises. The moments when you hide your real thoughts just to avoid conflict. When you laugh at things that actually hurt you so you won't look too sensitive. When you say yes, even though every part of you wants to say no. Over time, these tiny betrayals turn into a habit. You shrink your personality around certain people because you fear they won't like the real you. You soften your strengths because they make others uncomfortable. You silence your voice because you're scared of being judged, rejected, or left behind. And the more you do this, the more you start believing that your worth comes from how much people approve of you. You begin attaching your identity to their validation. You begin tolerating disrespect, not because it's okay, but because you're afraid of losing people who don't even treat you right. You keep saying, "It's fine," even though your heart knows it isn't. You let things slide again and again, even when those things slowly destroy your peace. From the outside, you look strong and calm, but on the inside, your soul is quietly breaking. Stoicism teaches a harsh but freeing truth. You only lose what you cling to. When you cling to approval, you lose your own voice. When you cling to people who don't value you, you lose your dignity. When you cling to environments that drain you, you lose your identity. But the moment you choose to walk away, truly walk away, everything begins to change. The invisible weight you've been carrying for years finally starts to lift. Your mind becomes clearer. Your heart feels lighter. Your self-respect, which you had buried under fear and people-pleasing, rises again like a seed finally getting sunlight. And that's when the real truth hits you. You never needed their acceptance at all. They needed your silence. They needed your fear of losing them. They needed your willingness to shrink so they could feel big. The approval you were chasing was never real. It was a form of control. Walking away is how you break that control. You don't need to argue, explain, justify, or defend. You simply leave. And with that one decision, you take back your power, your pride, and your identity. Once you reclaim those things, your perspective shifts. You realize that real respect doesn't come from others liking you. It comes from you liking yourself. You realize your value does not drop because someone failed to see it. You realize freedom begins the moment you stop betraying yourself to make others comfortable. Nothing in life grows when you force yourself to fit into places you've already outgrown. You grow when you walk away. You grow when you choose yourself. You grow when you finally understand that your self-respect is worth far more than anyone's approval. 2. If it costs you peace, it's too expensive. Most people don't realize how much of their life they waste trying to hold together things that are silently destroying them. They stay in relationships that drain them because they're scared of being alone. They stay in friendships that feel heavy because they don't want to be the bad person who walks away. They stay in environments that suffocate them because comfort feels safer than change. And every day, without noticing, they lose a little more of themselves. Their energy drops, their confidence fades, their mental clarity becomes foggy, their inner light dims, all because they keep choosing situations that cost them their peace. Stoicism teaches that peace is the highest form of wealth a human being can ever have. Not money, not status, not relationships. Peace. Because without peace, nothing in life feels meaningful. You can have everything and still feel empty if your mind is in chaos. You can be surrounded by people and still feel drained if your soul is tired. You can wake up every morning and still feel lost if your thoughts are constantly fighting with your reality. And the most painful part, you begin to blame yourself for the chaos that others are causing. The truth is simple but hard to accept. Anything that constantly disturbs your peace is too expensive for your life. It doesn't matter how long you've known them. It doesn't matter how much you love them. It doesn't matter what history you share. If something steals your inner calm, if it makes you overthink, if it keeps you anxious, if it interrupts your sleep, if it harms your mental balance, it is costing you more than you realize. People often say, but walking away is hard. Yes, it is, but staying is harder. Staying costs you your mental health, your dignity, your emotional stability, and your chance at a better life. When you walk away, you experience pain once. When you stay, you experience pain repeatedly, endlessly, silently. Stoicism teaches that choosing peace is an act of courage because you are choosing long-term harmony over short-term comfort. You are choosing growth over familiarity. You are choosing your future over your fear. When you walk away from chaos, something powerful happens. Your energy returns, your mind clears, your heartbeat slows. You start breathing differently. You start thinking differently. You start seeing opportunities you couldn't see before because you were too busy surviving. Peace doesn't just calm your life, it upgrades it. With peace, you become wiser, more focused, more disciplined, more creative, more emotionally stable. Your entire life begins to rise because your mind is finally quiet enough to see the path ahead. People who thrive on drama will call you cold. People who depended on your kindness will call you changed. People who benefited from your silence will call you selfish. Let them talk, because walking away isn't about proving anything to them. It's about choosing everything for yourself. Once you choose peace, chaos cannot follow you. Once you choose yourself, the wrong people cannot stay. And once you protect your mind, life begins to align itself around your new standards. Nothing is worth sacrificing your peace. Not a relationship, not a friendship, not a job, not an apology you'll never receive, not validation you don't need, because without peace, you lose the most important part of your life, your ability to live fully, love deeply, think clearly, and become the person you were meant to be. 3. People treat you exactly how you allow them to. One of the hardest truths to accept in life is that people do not suddenly become disrespectful. They become disrespectful gradually, and they do it with your permission every time you let something slide, every time you stay quiet when someone crosses a line, every time you swallow your pain to keep the peace. You teach people how to treat you. Respect isn't something you demand once, it's something you reinforce every moment you refuse to tolerate less than you deserve. Most people don't realize this until much later in life. They keep asking, why do people keep hurting me? But the deeper Stoic truth is, people repeat behaviors that go unchallenged. If someone sees you accept disrespect without speaking up, they learn that disrespect is acceptable. If someone sees you stay even when they've hurt you, they learn that your heart is easy to break. If someone sees you give effort even when they give you nothing, they learn that you will always compensate for their lack. You don't attract disrespect, you permit it. Stoicism teaches that while you cannot control the actions of others, you can always control your response. And your response is what sets your value in their eyes. The moment you start drawing boundaries, the entire dynamic changes, not because they suddenly became better people, but because you stopped allowing the worst parts of them to access you. When you set a boundary and someone gets angry, it means they benefited from you having none. When you distance yourself and someone tries to guilt-trip you, it means they depended on your lack of self-respect. When you walk away and someone suddenly realizes your worth, it means your absence taught them what your presence could not. The most powerful form of self-respect is recognizing when someone is draining your energy and deciding, without hesitation, that you will not allow it anymore. You don't need to yell. You don't need to argue. You don't need to explain your worth. Silence is a boundary. Distance is a message. Not reacting is a statement. People think boundaries are walls, but they're actually doors. Doors that lock out those who harm you and open for those who truly value you. When you allow people to treat you poorly, you're essentially telling your future self, your pain doesn't matter. But when you walk away, you send a different message. My peace matters, my dignity matters, my mental health matters, my future matters. Walking away isn't revenge, it's self-preservation. It's you saying, I refuse to be the one who keeps giving chances to people who keep giving me pain. And here's the part most people don't talk about. When you start valuing yourself, some people will leave. And that's a blessing. You are not losing them. You are losing the version of yourself that tolerated them. You are losing the habits that made you weaker. You are losing the patterns that kept you stuck. Don't fear the departure of those who never respected you. Fear staying where respect doesn't exist. When you enforce your worth consistently, you naturally attract people who see it. When you stop settling, your entire relationship ecosystem changes. People who truly care will rise. People who don't will fall away. And both outcomes are gifts. You are no longer controlled by fear of losing others. You are guided by the deeper fear of losing yourself. You understand that every moment you stay in a place where you are not valued, you are teaching the world that you don't value yourself. People will treat you exactly how you allow them to, but the day you stop allowing disrespect, your life shifts. Your relationships become healthier, your mind becomes calmer, your future becomes clearer, and you finally understand the truth Stoicism has tried to teach for centuries. Respect is not something you beg for, it is something you walk toward by walking away from anything that destroys you. 4. Staying where you're not valued is self-betrayal. There comes a point in every person's life when they look around and realize they've been holding on to places, people, and situations that stopped valuing them a long time ago, but instead of leaving, they stay. Not because they're weak, but because they've been conditioned to believe that endurance is loyalty, that suffering is love, and that silence is strength. They keep giving chances to people who don't even appreciate the first one. They keep showing up for people who wouldn't do the same. They keep carrying relationships, friendships, and environments on their back while receiving nothing in return. And slowly, without noticing, they start betraying themselves. Self-betrayal is not loud. It doesn't shout. It doesn't announce itself. It happens quietly, in the moments you dismiss your own feelings, in the moments you pretend you're okay when you're not, in the moments you tell yourself, maybe things will get better, even though they haven't changed in years. It happens every time you settle for less than what you know you deserve, every time you treat someone like a priority while they treat you like an option, every time you convince yourself that the scraps of attention you get are enough to keep you going. You think you're staying loyal to them, but in reality, you're abandoning yourself. Stoicism teaches that the deepest form of suffering comes from lying to yourself. And nothing is a bigger lie than telling yourself you're valued in a place where you're only tolerated. When you stay somewhere you are not valued, you are not choosing love. You are choosing fear. Fear of change, fear of loneliness, fear of starting over, fear of not finding better. And this fear becomes a cage that keeps you locked inside a life you've outgrown. You try to convince yourself to hold on, but your soul keeps whispering, this is not your home. The truth is simple but painful. Love should never feel like begging. Respect should never feel like a fight. Being valued should never feel like a battle you must win every day. If you have to repeatedly prove your worth, you are in the wrong place. If you have to question your value every night, you are loving the wrong people. If you have to sacrifice your mental peace just to keep someone close, you are betraying your future self for someone who doesn't even think about you. The moment you finally decide to walk away from a place where you are not valued, everything inside you begins to change. At first, it feels painful. You mourn the idea of what things could have been. You feel the emptiness of leaving behind a familiar environment. But slowly, something else emerges. A sense of clarity, a returning strength, a rising self-respect that had been buried under years of trying too hard. You start remembering who you were before you began dimming your light to make others comfortable. You start realizing how heavy the place was once you finally step out of it. You start understanding that peace was waiting for you on the other side of letting go. And here's the powerful part. Once you walk away from places that never valued you, you stop chasing validation from anyone. You stop begging for love. You stop explaining yourself. You stop shrinking just to fit into someone's narrow world. You begin to treat yourself with the respect you kept giving to the wrong people. You begin setting boundaries that you should have set years ago. You begin attracting people who genuinely see you, appreciate you, and value you without conditions. Because when you honor yourself, the world mirrors that respect back to you. Staying where you are not valued is self-betrayal, but walking away is self-liberation. It is the moment you reclaim your power. It is the moment you stop apologizing for wanting peace. It is the moment you choose your mental health over someone's temporary presence. It is the moment you stop trying to fix things that are not yours to fix. And in that moment you realize something life-changing. Letting go doesn't just free you from them. It frees you from the version of yourself that believed you had to stay. The lesson is brutally clear. Value yourself enough to leave anything that doesn't value you back. Because every time you walk away from what hurts you, you walk closer to the life that's meant for you. A life where your worth is not questioned, your heart is not taken for granted, and your presence is not treated like a burden. Leaving is not losing. Leaving is choosing yourself. And that choice will build a future you will be proud of. 5. Your next level requires you to outgrow people. There comes a moment in life when growth becomes uncomfortable, not because you're doing something wrong, but because you're evolving beyond the people and environments around you. And this is where most people get stuck, not because they lack potential, discipline, or intelligence, but because they do not realize that every next level of life requires a new version of you, and that new version cannot survive in old surroundings. When you grow internally but stay physically in the same place, the tension between who you are becoming and who you used to be becomes unbearable. That tension is the universe telling you, you've outgrown this. But outgrowing people doesn't mean you hate them. It doesn't mean they're bad or toxic. It means you are no longer aligned with the mindset they live in. You cannot rise while surrounded by people who are comfortable staying exactly where they are. You cannot evolve while constantly explaining your dreams to people who don't dream. You cannot build a disciplined life while being surrounded by people who live on excuses. And you cannot protect your mental peace while being around people who thrive on chaos. Sometimes the people you love most are also the people who hold you back the most, not on purpose, but because they don't grow at the speed you do. Stoicism teaches that nothing is permanent except change. Yet humans cling to familiarity because it feels safe. They stay in circles that limit them because they fear being alone. They keep the same friends even when the friendship has no growth left. They hold on to relationships that once made sense but now drain them mentally. They force themselves to fit into identities they have outgrown because stepping into the unknown feels terrifying. But what they don't realize is that clinging to the past prevents them from stepping into their future. Growth is not comfortable. Growth is not familiar. Growth is not predictable. Growth requires the courage to walk away from anything that keeps you small. Your next level requires clarity. Clarity that doesn't come from noise, approval, or distractions. It comes from silence, solitude, and honest self-reflection. And when you start reflecting honestly, you begin to notice everything that no longer fits your new direction. You notice the conversations that drain you rather than inspire you. You notice the habits that sabotage your progress. You notice the people who celebrate your setbacks but stay silent during your achievements. You notice the environments that feel too small for your vision. And once you see these things, you cannot unsee them. This is the part where growth becomes painful. You start losing people. Not because you push them away, but because your evolution exposes the lack of theirs. Your discipline exposes their laziness. Your goals expose their comfort. Your self-respect exposes their disrespect. Your silence exposes their chaos. Your rising standards expose their lack of effort. And naturally, the distance begins. Conversations become shorter. Energy feels different. You stop fitting into places that once felt like home, and eventually you realize that the version of you they loved no longer exists. And that's okay. You are supposed to outgrow people. You are supposed to evolve past your old identity. You are supposed to shed versions of yourself that no longer serve your future. That is how life works. Outgrowing people is not the loss you think it is. It is the proof that you are moving forward. When you walk away from those who limit your potential, you create space for better people to enter your life. People who align with your values, your vision, and your emotional maturity. You make room for friendships built on growth, support, and depth, rather than gossip, convenience, and comfort. You open the door for relationships where effort is mutual, respect is natural, and love is unforced. Your life begins to rise the moment you stop forcing connections that drain you. And here is the most powerful truth. Your next level is never crowded. The higher you rise, the fewer people you will find around you. Growth narrows your circle because not everyone is willing to rise with you. Some people prefer the old version of you, the version who tolerated everything, who explained everything, who accepted being treated poorly, who lived without boundaries, who carried everyone's problems, who didn't know their own worth. When you outgrow that version, you automatically outgrow the people attached to it. Walking away from people you've outgrown is not selfish, it is necessary. It is how you protect your energy, your vision, your mental health, and your potential. You are not responsible for dragging anyone forward. You are responsible for becoming the best version of yourself. And sometimes, the path to becoming your best self requires walking alone for a while, but solitude is not punishment. It is preparation. Preparation for the life you are meant to live. Preparation for the opportunities waiting for you. Preparation for the person you are destined to become. The universe always rewards those who choose growth over comfort. When you raise your standards, life rises with you. When you protect your time and energy, better things begin to flow toward you. When you walk away from what no longer matches your future finally has space to arrive. Outgrowing people is not the end. It is the beginning of your next chapter. 6. Walking away is not giving up. It's choosing yourself. Most people grow up believing that walking away means failure. They're taught that holding on is strength, that enduring pain is loyalty, and that staying in a situation, no matter how much it destroys you, somehow makes you a good person. But this mindset is exactly why so many people remain stuck in relationships that drain them, friendships that disrespect them, routines that suffocate them, and places that were never meant to be a part of their future. They continue to carry emotional weights that were never theirs to hold. They continue to fight battles that aren't theirs to win. They continue to pour into people who don't pour back. And slowly, without realizing it, they abandon themselves while trying to save everyone else. Walking away has nothing to do with weakness. In fact, it is one of the hardest acts of strength a human being can ever perform. It requires clarity. It requires honesty. It requires emotional maturity. It requires you to look at your life without excuses, without fantasies, without hoping things will magically change. It requires you to accept the reality you tried so long to avoid. It requires you to admit to yourself that something you wanted, someone you loved, or a chapter you clung to is no longer aligned with who you are becoming. This kind of honesty breaks people before it frees them. Stoicism teaches that letting go is not about losing. It's about preserving what is left of you. It's about protecting your peace, your dignity, your sanity, and your future. When you walk away, you are not running from something. You are returning to yourself. You are reclaiming the parts of you that were buried under constant stress, fear, disappointment, and emotional neglect. You are choosing your mental clarity over chaos. You are choosing long-term peace over short-term comfort. You are choosing your worth over someone else's convenience. The reason walking away hurts so much is because you are leaving behind the version of yourself who tolerated what hurt you. You are shedding a skin that was familiar but damaging. You are releasing attachments you once believed you couldn't live without. You are letting go of a story you told yourself for years, and any time you detach from an identity, your heart feels it deeply. But this pain is not punishment. It is purification. It is life removing everything that slows down your evolution. People often stay in painful situations because of fear. Fear of loneliness, fear of starting over, fear of the unknown, fear of not finding anything better, fear of being misunderstood. But loneliness is not the enemy. Staying where you are, unloved, is. Starting over is not scary. Staying stuck is. The unknown is not dangerous. Repeating the same painful cycle is. And the fear of not finding better is the biggest lie your mind tells you when you've been undervalued for too long. Here's the truth most people avoid. When you walk away from what hurts you, your life doesn't get smaller. It expands. Your future doesn't disappear. It becomes clearer. Your value doesn't decrease. It rises. The universe doesn't punish you. It opens new doors that were blocked by your loyalty to the wrong things. The moment you choose yourself, everything changes. You begin to attract better experiences. You begin to rebuild your confidence. You begin to hear your own thoughts again. You begin to feel your own energy returning. You begin to connect with people who see you clearly and treat you with the respect you always deserved. And here's something even more powerful. The moment you walk away, the people who took you for granted suddenly wake up. Your absence exposes their behavior in ways your presence never could. Your silence becomes louder than your words. Your distance becomes more meaningful than your explanations. The space you create by walking away forces others to confront the truth they kept avoiding. But by the time they realize what they lost, you're no longer the same person who once begged for crumbs. You've grown, you've healed, you've moved forward. Walking away is not the end of your story. It is the beginning of a new chapter where you finally choose yourself without feeling guilty. You choose your peace, even if it means being misunderstood. You choose your self-worth, even if it means standing alone for a while. You choose your future, even if your past tries to pull you back. The path of self-respect is not crowded, because only a few people have the courage to take it. Every time you walk away from something that breaks you, you walk toward a life that builds you. You walk toward inner calm. You walk toward emotional clarity. You walk toward healthier relationships. You walk toward environments that support your growth. You walk toward a future where you are not surviving. You are living. Walking away is not giving up. It is the deepest form of self-love. It is the moment you finally whisper to yourself, "I deserve better than this," and then act on it. And that one decision can transform your entire life. 7. 1. Powerful walk away can rewrite your entire life. There comes a point when a single moment, a single decision, a single step becomes the turning point of your entire existence. People think major life changes require huge events, dramatic actions, or sudden miracles, but in reality, the most life-changing shift happens in silence, in private, inside the mind, when you finally decide, I will not live like this anymore. That decision, that quiet revolution in your heart, becomes the beginning of an entirely new chapter of your life. One powerful walkaway can rewrite your entire story, not because the world changes, but because you change. For years, you may have been carrying emotional weight that was never meant for you, trying to fix people who don't want to fix themselves, trying to heal relationships that were already over, trying to hold on to environments that drained your soul, trying to prove your worth to people who never deserved access to your heart. You might have convinced yourself that things will get better, that people will change, that someone will suddenly appreciate you the way you deserve. But deep down, you knew the truth. You weren't just holding on, you were holding yourself back. There is something strange about human beings. We can survive pain for a long time. We can tolerate disappointment for months, even years. We can swallow disrespect, ignore red flags, silence our emotions, and pretend to be okay while drowning internally. But the universe always sends a breaking point, a moment where your soul whispers louder than your fear, a moment where your inner voice says, enough. This voice is not anger, it is not revenge, it is not ego, it is self-preservation. It is the real you rising after being quiet for too long. Stoicism teaches that suffering becomes wisdom when you stop resisting what the truth is trying to show you. And the truth is always the same. You cannot build a new life while holding on to things that destroy you. You cannot grow while staying attached to people who keep you small. You cannot evolve while clinging to chapters that are already closed spiritually, mentally, and emotionally. A single walkaway, done at the right moment, is not just a physical decision, it is a spiritual awakening. It is the moment you stop being the victim of your circumstances and become the author of your life. Here's what people don't understand. Walking away is not just leaving a situation. It is leaving an entire identity behind. The identity that tolerated too much. The identity that doubted itself. The identity that accepted breadcrumbs. The identity that feared loneliness. The identity that stayed quiet to avoid losing people when you walk away. That version of you dies. And from that death, a stronger, wiser, calmer, more self-respecting version is born. At first, the transition feels uncomfortable. You feel the absence of what once was familiar. You feel the weight of your own thoughts. You feel the silence that used to be filled with noise, but with time, something powerful begins to happen. You start to rediscover yourself. You start to breathe differently, sleep differently, think differently. You start getting back energy you didn't even know you lost. You start hearing ideas, dreams, and desires that were buried under years of emotional chaos. You start realizing that peace was not something you had to earn. It was something you had to choose. And then, slowly but surely, life begins to open in ways you never imagined. New people appear. New opportunities show up. New ideas come alive. You feel your confidence returning. You feel your worth stabilizing. You feel your future pulling you forward instead of your past pulling you back. Walking away didn't end your story. It rescued it. It put you back on the path you were always meant to follow. The most surprising part is how the world reacts once you walk away. People who once ignored your worth suddenly notice it. People who once took you for granted begin to realize what they lost. People who once depended on your silence start feeling the pain of your absence. But by then, you're not the same person anymore. You're not waiting for apologies. You're not waiting for closure. You're not waiting for validation. You're not waiting for them to understand. You have already closed the door, not with anger, but with clarity. Because the walkaway wasn't about them. It was about you. It was about reclaiming your identity. It was about saving your future self from years of wasted potential. It was about breaking a generational pattern of emotional suffering. It was about choosing peace over familiarity. It was about choosing clarity over confusion. It was about choosing growth over comfort. It was about choosing yourself over everything that hurt you. One powerful walkaway can rewrite your entire life because it forces you to meet the strongest version of yourself. The version who sets boundaries, who knows their worth, who protects their energy, who refuses to be controlled by fear, and who finally understands what true freedom feels like. And once you meet that version of yourself, you will never go back to who you were. Walking away is not the end. It is the beginning of the life you were always meant to live. A life where you are not begging for love, not tolerating disrespect, not explaining yourself to people who don't care, not shrinking to make others comfortable. A life where you stand firm, walk with dignity, love yourself without apology, and choose peace every single time. That is the power of one walkaway. It can transform your destiny. 8. The life you want begins the moment you stop explaining yourself. One of the most exhausting things a person can do is constantly explain who they are, why they feel a certain way, what they need, and what they deserve to people who were never listening in the first place. You spend months trying to justify your feelings, trying to prove your intentions, trying to earn understanding, trying to fix misunderstandings, trying to defend your boundaries, trying to convince people that your needs are not unreasonable. But the truth is brutally simple. People who truly value you don't need explanations, and people who don't value you won't understand no matter how much you explain. Most people drain their energy not because life is hard, but because they surround themselves with individuals who make simple things complicated. You express your pain, they call you dramatic. You express your needs, they call you demanding. You express your standards, they call you difficult. You express your limits, they call you selfish. And slowly, you begin to question yourself, doubting your own worth, wondering if you're asking for too much, when, in reality, you're asking for the bare minimum. The problem is not your expectations. The problem is the environment that makes you feel guilty for having them. Stoicism teaches that your peace does not come from convincing the world to understand you. Your peace comes from understanding yourself so deeply that you no longer need the world's approval to validate your truth. The day you stop explaining yourself is the day you stop negotiating your worth. It is the day you stop asking people to treat you right. It is the day you stop begging for compassion, empathy, respect, and reciprocity. That is the day your real life begins. Explaining yourself to the wrong people is a form of self-betrayal because it forces you to shrink, reword, reshape, and water down your inner truth to fit the emotional capacity of someone who doesn't care. You begin modifying your tone just to avoid triggering their insecurities. You begin hiding your achievements to avoid their jealousy. You begin making excuses for their behavior to protect the relationship. You begin lowering your standards to keep the peace. And you begin carrying emotional burdens that were never yours to carry. This is not love. This is not loyalty. This is emotional imprisonment. When you finally stop explaining yourself, something powerful begins to happen. You regain your energy, you protect your time, you enforce your boundaries with quiet strength. You speak less but mean more. You stop begging to be understood and start surrounding yourself with people who naturally understand you. You stop tolerating inconsistencies, broken promises, one-sided relationships, and emotional immaturity. You start valuing your own voice more than their opinions, and you start choosing peace over the exhausting cycle of proving yourself. There is a deep inner freedom in knowing who you are without needing permission from anyone to exist that way. You begin seeing things with shocking clarity. How much you were overgiving, how much you were over-explaining, how much you were letting people access your emotions without earning that privilege. You start seeing how many conversations you carried alone, how many apologies you gave twice, how many chances you offered endlessly, and you realize that the love you kept trying to explain was being wasted on people who never intended to understand it. The more you walk away from environments where you must constantly justify your existence, the more your self-worth expands. You begin attracting people who love you without explanation, who respect your silence, who value your presence, who honor your boundaries, and who show up consistently without needing reminders. You begin building relationships where communication flows naturally, where understanding is mutual, where peace is shared, and where effort is two-sided. These relationships feel like home, not a battlefield. And here is the deepest truth. The right people will understand your silence more than the wrong people ever understood your words. When you stop over-explaining yourself, you stop giving people the power to shape your identity. You begin living for yourself, not for their acceptance. You begin choosing actions over explanations, peace over performance, clarity over confusion, and alignment over approval. You no longer chase closure, you give it to yourself. You no longer chase validation, you validate yourself. You no longer chase understanding, you understand yourself. The life you want, the life filled with peace, meaning, self-respect, and emotional freedom, begins the moment you stop explaining yourself to those who are committed to misunderstanding you. That moment is not small. It is the rebirth of your true self, because you finally understand that your worth was never meant to be debated. It was meant to be lived. 9. Your healing begins the moment you stop chasing people. One of the greatest forms of self-destruction is the belief that you must chase people in order to be valued, loved, or chosen. You spend huge portions of your life trying to prove your worth to those who barely notice your presence. You try to hold on to relationships that slip through your fingers. You stretch yourself thin to keep people close. You compromise your self-respect just to avoid being alone. And you tell yourself that if you try a little harder, love a little more, sacrifice a little further, maybe, just maybe, they will finally understand your heart. But here's the painful truth. Chasing people is the fastest way to lose yourself. When someone truly values you, you don't have to chase them. Connection flows naturally. Communication is reciprocal, effort is balanced, and presence is consistent. You don't have to remind them you exist. You don't have to earn the love they give freely. You don't have to beg for bare minimum attention. You don't have to justify why you deserve respect. But when you chase the wrong people, you start believing that you must fight for what should have been given willingly. Stoicism teaches one of the most liberating lessons. You only suffer when you try to control what is not yours to control. And people, their actions, their effort, their honesty, their love, are not yours to control. The moment you stop chasing others, your healing begins, because you finally redirect your energy inward instead of pouring it into bottomless cups. You stop trying to convince someone to choose you. You stop trying to force connections that lack depth. You stop trying to revive bonds that died a long time ago. You stop tying your identity to people who treat you like an afterthought. You stop exhausting your mind with what if and maybe one day. When you stop chasing, you allow yourself to see reality clearly. You begin to understand that some people were never meant to stay. They were meant to teach you, to challenge you, to reveal parts of yourself you needed to heal. You begin to see how much of your pain came from holding on to illusions instead of accepting the truth. You begin to notice how many sacrifices you made for people who didn't even appreciate the smallest effort. And you begin to realize that your desire to be chosen by someone else was actually a desire to avoid choosing yourself. The moment you stop chasing, your energy transforms. The emotional weight you've carried for years starts to lift. You feel the return of mental clarity. Your self-respect begins rebuilding itself piece by piece. You start respecting your time, your boundaries, your goals, and your emotional needs. You finally understand that love should never feel like a battlefield where you constantly fight alone. Healthy love meets you halfway. Healthy love grows without force. Healthy love doesn't require chasing, it requires presence. Here is the truth people avoid facing. The person you chase today will be the person you resent tomorrow. Because chasing turns love into survival, it turns affection into desperation, it turns relationships into emotional debt. And sooner or later, the pain becomes unbearable. You wake up one day with the crushing realization that you have abandoned yourself in the process of trying to hold on to someone who was never holding on to you. But when you stop chasing, something extraordinary happens. You begin to receive the love you once begged for, not from the people you chased, but from the people you attract by standing still. You begin connecting with individuals who admire your peace, not your desperation, who appreciate your presence, not your effort alone, who respect your boundaries, not your willingness to break them. You begin attracting relationships that build you instead of draining you, that protect your heart instead of testing it, that bring clarity instead of confusion. And this is where your healing truly begins. You stop seeing rejection as proof that you're not enough. You start seeing it as protection. You stop seeing someone's lack of effort as a reflection of your worth. You start seeing it as a sign to walk away. You stop clinging to temporary comfort. You start making choices that honor your future self. Healing begins the moment you stop running after people whose path does not include you. When you stop chasing, you reclaim your power. You align with your purpose. You rediscover your identity. You begin to heal wounds that were never yours to carry, and most importantly, you finally make space for the people and the love that were always meant for you. You were never meant to chase, you were meant to choose, and the moment you choose yourself, your entire life begins to transform. 10. Your future starts the moment you stop arguing about your worth. One of the most exhausting battles in life is the fight to be understood by people who have already decided not to understand you. You try to explain your intentions, you try to justify your feelings, you try to prove your goodness, you try to defend your boundaries, you try to convince them that your heart is genuine, but no matter how honest you are, no matter how many chances you give, no matter how much effort you pour in, they continue to twist your words, minimize your pain, and overlook your value. And slowly, you begin to realize the deepest truth. You cannot argue someone into treating you better. When someone respects you, you don't need to explain your worth. They feel it. When someone loves you, you don't need to convince them to stay. They choose you willingly. When someone sees your value, you don't need to remind them. They show it consistently. But when someone is committed to misunderstanding you, your words become meaningless. Your explanations become emotional labor. Your heart becomes a target. Your truth becomes a burden. And every argument you engage in becomes another moment you betray yourself. Stoicism teaches that peace begins the moment you stop fighting battles that drain your soul. And the biggest battle you must walk away from is the battle of proving your worth to people whose hearts are too small to receive you. Your worth is not a courtroom to defend. It is not a debate to win. It is not a puzzle to decode. It is not a prize you earn. Your worth it exists independent of their opinions, their insecurities, and their limited emotional capacity. Every time you argue with someone about your worth, you are sending your future self a message. Their opinion matters more than my peace. Every time you stay in a loop of defending your character, you are telling your inner child, we must earn love to deserve it. Every time you allow someone to question your intentions, your boundaries, or your value, you are teaching your mind that you must constantly fight to be treated with dignity. This is how people slowly lose themselves, not through one big betrayal, but through the hundreds of tiny moments where they accepted less than they deserved. Your future begins the moment you refuse to participate in that cycle anymore. The moment you stop explaining, defending, arguing, or justifying, The moment you tell yourself, those who see my worth will never need a speech, and those who don't will never understand one. That moment becomes the doorway to the life you were meant to live. When you stop arguing about your worth, the noise in your life finally fades. Your thoughts become clearer, your emotional energy returns, your self-respect strengthens. You begin to understand the difference between people who misunderstand you because they care and want clarity, and people who misunderstand you because they want control, drama, or emotional dominance. You stop allowing guilt or manipulation to guide your decisions. You begin choosing silence over conflict, dignity over begging, boundaries over pleasing, and self-worth over approval. The moment you stop arguing about your value, your relationships transform. You no longer tolerate half love, half effort, half respect. You no longer chase people who run from responsibility. You no longer explain yourself to those who twist your truth. Instead, you begin to gravitate toward people whose souls align with yours, who meet your energy, who communicate clearly, who value honesty, who respect your boundaries effortlessly, and who never make you feel like you need to prove your worth. Here's a truth most people avoid. The wrong people will always make you feel like you're asking for too much, while the right people will make you wonder why you ever settled for so little. When you stop arguing about your worth, you stop begging for the wrong people to act like the right ones. You stop shrinking yourself to fit into their limited emotional world. You stop explaining love to those who have no intention of giving it back. You stop negotiating your dignity with people who treat respect like a privilege instead of a standard. And something powerful happens when you finally walk away from these battles. Your future opens. New paths appear. New opportunities find you. New relationships enter your life with ease, not force. You attract peace instead of chaos, clarity instead of confusion, reciprocity instead of exhaustion. You stop living your life trying to be accepted and start living your life from a place of inner truth. When you stop arguing about your worth, you begin to embody it. You walk differently. You talk differently. You love differently. You choose differently. You begin to realize that the strongest form of self-love is quiet. It doesn't scream. It doesn't chase. It doesn't beg. It simply walks away from anything that makes you question your value. Your future doesn't start when you achieve your goals. It starts when you refuse to lower your worth just to fit into someone's limited understanding of who you are. And when that moment comes, your entire destiny shifts. The life you dream of, the peaceful life, the meaningful life, the fulfilling life, begins the moment you stop explaining yourself to those who were never meant to understand you, and start becoming the version of yourself who finally understands your own worth. In the end, life becomes beautifully simple the moment you finally understand one thing. You are not here to suffer for people who refuse to grow, refuse to listen, refuse to respect you, or refuse to meet you where you stand. You are here to rise. You are here to evolve. You are here to become the strongest, calmest, most self-respecting version of yourself. And that transformation begins the moment you walk away from the things, the people, the habits, and the environments that make you forget your worth. Walking away is not an act of cruelty. It is an act of clarity. For years, you may have tried to keep your life together by holding on to relationships that drained you, conversations that went nowhere, friendships built on convenience, opportunities that never honored your potential, and cycles that repeated the same pain again and again. You stayed because you hoped something would change. You stayed because you didn't want to hurt anyone. You stayed because you were scared of the unknown. But staying cost you parts of yourself you didn't even realize you were losing. Your peace, your confidence, your joy, your identity. The truth is harsh but freeing. Your life does not improve by holding on. It improves by letting go. You cannot grow while tied to the things that keep you small. You cannot heal while reopening wounds that never stop bleeding. You cannot find peace in the same places where your heart was broken. You cannot discover your future while clinging to chapters that already ended, and you cannot become who you are meant to be while protecting the feelings of people who never protected yours. The moment you walk away, your healing begins. At first, the silence feels heavy, the distance feels unfamiliar, the empty space feels uncomfortable, but slowly something amazing starts to happen. Your mind gets quieter, your heart gets lighter, your thoughts get clearer. You start hearing yourself again, not the voice of fear, not the voice of guilt, not the voice of doubt, but the voice of your true self that was buried under years of emotional noise. This is what walking away gives you. It gives you back your power. It gives you back your time. It gives you back your dignity. It gives you back your peace. It gives you back you. And once you return to yourself, everything in your life begins to rise. You begin attracting people who appreciate your presence instead of taking it for granted. You begin building relationships based on respect instead of survival. You begin making choices that honor your future instead of your fears. You begin living with a sense of purpose instead of a sense of obligation. You begin rising above the things you once thought you couldn't live without, because you finally realize that the only person you truly needed was the version of yourself you abandoned long ago. This is the meaning of true strength, not holding on, but knowing when to let go. Not enduring pain, but protecting your peace. Not proving yourself, but respecting yourself. Not chasing, but choosing. Not breaking for others, but building yourself back stronger than before. So let this be your reminder. The moment you walk away from what hurts you, your real life begins. Not a life where you are surviving, but a life where you are living with clarity, courage, peace and self-respect. A life where your boundaries are strong, your standards are higher, your heart is wiser, and your soul is finally free. Your story is not ending, it is just beginning, and this time you are choosing yourself.